It's so hard to describe the Pontani Sisters.
They're dancers.
Trio of dancing sisters, choreographed, Ziegfeld Follies, burlesque, vaudeville, MGM Technicolor musical. Sensibilities of like a Gene Kelly singing in the rain, mix it in with a Carmen Miranda hat, with a little bump and grind, Elvis in a jumpsuit doing kung fu moves on a stage, and just throw it all in a pot and shake it up.
They represent an extraordinary blend of sugar and spice that's hard to find among today's performers.
For us, it's really a state of mind, you know? It's just, if you have that obnoxious, satirical sense of humor, then you'll enjoy it.
The World Famous Pontani Sisters are three very strong women who have a dream of making some sort of difference in performance and for women.
The three clones up there doing their choreographed, wacky costume routine, and we get a great reception, and I think people like it because it's a breath of fresh air, and they're just seeing something that you really can't explain. The dance editor at Village Voice was the first person who wrote a review of us and called us burlesque.
I don't perceive what they do as burlesque, but I could see them being lumped into that category of show business. And the burlesque word to a lot of people has a bad connotation to it, the word, you know. But
I don't know what you would lump them into. So I guess if you look at the whole picture, that's where you got to throw them, in the burlesque category. Because I don't know where else they'd go.
What they're doing up there, they're beautiful to me. They look great
And
together.
it's more like comedy burlesque.
Yeah, that's how we feel about it.
I did not even know what burlesque was until people were like, "You're burlesque." There's so many people that were burlesque that I had no idea that they would have been classified as burlesque. Going into it, I had a rough idea. Now that it's my life, I have a very good idea. Over-the-top costumes, fanfare, ridiculousness, very obnoxious, sexy, but almost sexy in the making fun of sexy way. Not like an MTV video way, like a making fun of sexy way.
Dancing girls, you know, striptease, feathers, sequins, a show, but not quite like Vegas showgirl, but like, yeah, this, I mean, basically what we're doing, you know, is, I knew that it was the right term to use.
Burlesque isn't a type of dance. Burlesque is a satirical form of entertainment. It's over the top, and we bring dance into it with outrageous costumes, and it's the whole combination of its parts that bring us into that burlesque world. In the turn of the century, burlesque was almost like a Saturday Night Live, because it would just be shows consisting of skits making fun of what's going on in the world at the time. So that's what it is to me, and we express it through dance. For us, it's really a state of mind, you know? It's just, if you have that obnoxious, satirical sense of humor and are the type of person that can laugh at yourself and everybody else without thinking about political correctness or any other crap, then you'll enjoy it.
Burlesque is so, it's just boiling over at this point.
Everybody's a burlesque performer. It's really amazing. We get so many emails of people telling us they want to start a burlesque troupe, you know, what do we need to do? All these kinds of things, and or performers in the city contacting us. I perform in this, you know, hi, I perform in the city, I want to perform with you guys, I'm a burlesque act, and we're just like, wow. There was such a handful of us 4 years ago, and now it's just like, everyone you talk to it's interesting. Sociological level. The burlesque movement came and found us and said, will you be part of Teaserama?
There was a lot of striptease going on, and then here come the Pontani Sisters, just doing something completely different from that. And like every act, one after the other, there were so many good acts. Some of them shine, you know, some of them really stick out. But people wanted to see something different.
The burlesque world on a whole is incredibly focused right now on striptease, which was an aspect of it, which is tongue-in-cheek and funny and great, but we are just a little bit different.
I know that there are people out there who say that we don't fit into this movement and that, you know, we're not really burlesque. And I think that that's ignorant. And I think that people who think burlesque is just about stripping should open a book.
We've been around doing it for a long time. There have also been other girls in the scene who have been around doing it for a long time. We want to continue to work in this scene, but I also feel like, you know, once you do something, you know, then you take the next step. And I definitely want to take a step, you know, not necessarily outside of it. I want to continue to work, you know. It's like actors who do theater and they decide they want to do film. And they start to work with film, but they're like, oh, I miss the theater. Like, that's how I see us, you know. Oh, I miss being on stage in that burlesque scene, you know. Like, oh, those were the days.
I was probably 4 when I went into dancing school. Possibly 3, but most likely 4.
I'm sure my mom just needed a place to put us for our energy to be expelled.
And you can't put Tara in dancing school and not me, so it just seemed like a natural place for us to be.
And it went from, you know, jazz to jazz and tap, and then it went to jazz, tap, and ballet, and then it went to modern dance. They must have had 3 or 4 classes a week at the dance shop. And I was there most of my life with the girls, and they loved it. They just loved it.
I was like the worst in the class, like drifting off into space, messing up, like counting out loud.
I remember clearly having clogs and tapping around the kitchen on the tile. And I was like, I want to take tap class. I wanted to make that sound, you know, with my feet. And I was taking jazz class, like, oh my God, this feels good. Like, my body felt like, you know, that's what I was supposed to be doing. And my teacher asked my mother, she's like, I think you should put her in solo lessons for jazz. She's like, I'd like to work with her. So I ended up doing solo jazz, like performing, competing.
She was first place in Miss Dance, which was almost like a Miss America type routine where you had to wear a bathing suit, then you had to wear an evening gown, and then you had to answer questions. And she really surprised me. She carried the answering the questions off real well without any actual formal training. I was really shocked at that time how well she handled the whole thing. And she won first place in Miss Dance.
But it was something that she really enjoyed.
And I was Cinderella in 6th grade. Anything theatrical or showy, I was always involved in. In high school, I was in all the plays. I did all that stuff. That was the route that I took.
She tended not to be so much academic, but more theatrical. And Tara, on the other hand, was a wonderful student, and the teachers loved her.
I never said when I grew up I want to be a dancer. We changed school districts, and the school district that we moved into was really heavy in sports, and I was very intrigued by. I had no idea what field hockey was until we moved, and I wanted to try that. And then there was a tennis team, I wanted to try that, and a basketball team. There were just all these extracurricular activities that weren't available to us in Trenton that I was so excited about.
I graduated high school. I moved to New York. I was 17. I went to NYU for a little while. I didn't like it, dropped out, got a job at a restaurant. I was auditioning for things. I went to NYU for theater. I was in the theater, dance, like musical, all that crap.
I saw this audition sheet on the wall for dance, you know, for dance. It said dance company, Henry Ford Community College Dance Company. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a dancer. So I auditioned for the company. I got in, and I danced for 2 years with the Henry Ford Full Circle Dance Company and learned this whole other, you know, about modern dance, about the pioneers of dance.
Someone that I worked with at the restaurant was in a show, and he was like, why don't you come and audition for this show? And it was a dance show, and I wasn't really that confident about it because I hadn't been dancing really seriously for a couple of years. But I went to the audition and I got the show, and that show was Dutch Wiseman's, and it was 1994, 95, and it was basically a very burlesque styled review.
I've always been involved in whatever Andrea's extracurricular activities are, whether it's wherever she had a show, whatever she was doing, I was either bartending or coat checking or just merely there, and because it was always so much fun.
I had this whole idea of New York, you know, bright lights, big city. I think a lot of people, you know, who live in small towns or whatever have that whole idea of, you know, this is the place you want to go if you want to be, you know, successful or a performer or whatever.
I always wanted to be a performer, always. And I didn't know exactly how. I thought I wanted to be an actress for a while until I went to acting school, and I realized that I don't want to play anybody except for me, but as glamorously as I possibly can, you know? Like, I don't want to be anybody else. I want to be me. But I want a fox fur, fake. I want, like, my car with somebody else driving, you know? Like, it's just, I watched too many old movies when I was little.
We come from a very Italian-American family, and everybody's very animated, very loud. I think that was also a huge influence, probably more so than any musical.
I just like the style of the past better. And I like the clothes, I like the music, I like the jewelry, I like the dancing. I just like it better. I've never been much up with the modern times. I don't like to listen to the radio or watch television or read periodicals. I really try to stay away from it because I think it poisons your mind.
I remember getting my headshots done right before I started to work with Angie. And I remember I focused it on being like old school, like Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich. I was like, my dad's friend took this shot and I was like, I want it to appear to be, you know, something from 1920 or 30. That's the job that I want. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's in film, dance, whatever, but someone who's gonna hire me, I want them to look at that and be like, that's, you know, that's what we want.
I got hired to choreograph a show for this band called the Flying Neutrinos, and they wanted to do a kind of retro-inspired, vaudeville-flavored show. And so Ingrid, the lead singer, hired me to choreograph and costume it, and I needed another dancer.
There was an ad in Backstage, and it said, looking for girls around 5'2" or something like that. That was like stars, like bing, bing, bing. I was like, 5'2"? Somebody's looking for a girl who's 5'2"? Like, when do you see that? You never see that. It said something, I think, about cabaret or something about showgirl, or I can't remember, but it sounded showy, that's all I know. Showy and 5'2", like, I pictured like sequin costumes, and I saw cabaret, you know, like the Kit Kat girl. I'm like, this is it.
Probably like 50 girls came to this audition, but I wasn't seeing what I really wanted. And Helen walked in the door, and I swear to God, like the minute I saw her, I was like, it's her, I know it's her. And I knew it was gonna be her before she even like danced or opened her mouth to say a word. I knew that that's who I wanted to work with.
And I remember Angie's movement, it was like this, you know, turn thing that we were doing. And it was like the last move before the combination was over. And I was like, I'm gonna get this job. Angie and I had done a few shows, just the two of us, and then there was the singer, Ingrid, who was in between us. So it was like Angie and I and Ingrid.
And they were like, well, you come and do this, you know, come play with us.
She saw Angie and I rehearsing at the house. She's like, I want to get back into dance.
The real beginning was November 6th, 1999. It was my birthday. It was our show at Swing 46. And it was the first time that we all went out there and did Mambo together. And that's what I really view the beginning of it as.
And I think it was the first performance I had done where people weren't like, Helen's our friend, we gotta be here. It was the first time I got off stage and my friends were like, oh, you know, oh, I love that, you know, oh my gosh, I love your makeup, I love the costumes, you guys dance so well, you know. Usually it was like, that was good, you know, you did good.
Literally from that one show, it just started to snowball.
Their friend Rob had said something like, you guys should be like the world famous Pontani Sisters.
That's your name, the world famous, you know, that you pick for yourself. You have to get famous first to be famous, right?
I think it sounds great, the world famous Pontani Sisters.
It just seems to work. I can't see it like the Burlesque Sisters. For some reason, that just doesn't. Tara and I always joke around. We'll joke with Andrew. We're like, we're leaving and we're forming the Burlesque Sisters. But for some reason, even though I love my last name, it just doesn't have the same. I don't know what it is. It must be that Italian thing.
I'm happy with the name.
And they even joke that when they get married, their spouse will have to take on the Pontani name.
I don't know why they decided that I was going to be a sister too, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of happened, as far as I remember it. It wasn't really talked about much. It was kind of like, still we're sisters, and we're the world famous Pontani Sisters.
I think if we were just like the Pontani Friends or like the Friends, I think it would be good, but I think the sisters aspect just puts it over the top.
When nobody knew who we were at all, it was definitely something that got everybody to really pay attention.
I think it's a catch. I think people are immediately intrigued by the word sisters.
People don't know who you are, and you're like, well, we're a sister act, you know? And then they see us, and in our makeup and our costumes, we're like 3 clones on stage, and it kind of freaks people out, you know? It kind of gives us like this sideshow, freaky aspect. And I think for people who don't know us, it's very important because it creates a whole image in their mind.
It's the #1 asked question, are you really sisters?
This is part of our act. And just like in the Carney life, like, you know, the girl in the tin cup or whatever tells this story to get you to come and see her show, but it's a total lie, you know? She wasn't like imported from India, like on an elephant's back that swam across the ocean.
You meet people and, yeah, we're really sisters, and then these people eventually become a part of your life, and it's like, do we tell them?
It gets a little weird sometimes, and then we go back and forth with like, should we really make sure we stick with this, or should we just have fun with it, or
are they going to be mad that we were lying to them all along? You know, like, were we really lying? Like, what do we do? And then we feel awful.
In the beginning, it was kind of like, okay, we need a mambo, we need a chair dance, we need a Las Vegas number. And then after we had those 3, because we were like, we need a tap dance. And those were our first ones.
it's like one of us will have an idea, all 3 of us will have an idea, and we all kind of just roll with it after that and come up with, sometimes it starts with the music, sometimes it starts with an idea of a dance, a holiday.
So it's like sex bombs are hiding behind these fans and then revealed.
Exactly. But it's gonna be like, but don't give it the quiver until the.
Okay.
All right, listen. Let's see what it's about. So we'll be like, dip, dip. So hard you can't sing. Dip, 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 dip. Ba 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 ba. Did you just pull a feather out?
No, it's like,
Alright, don't worry about it. Just leave it alone. Don't pull it out.
I pulled it, Andrea, it's out.
Because you're pulling it out. After we had all those down and we wanted to expand the repertoire, it just became this thing of like, oh, I was watching a movie today and I saw this Josephine Baker thing. Why don't we do a jungle number?
Ange and I were in a Salvation Army shopping for stuff, and I found a green beaded crazy dress, and I was like, Ange, doesn't this look like this would be a great costume? And she was like, yeah.
And we needed to make an Irish dance, and Angie came up with the Danny Boy song, but using the Conway Twitty version, the rockabilly version.
driving down Flatbush one day, and there was a girl dressed in her cheerleading uniform on the side of the road waiting for the bus, and Ange was like, we have to do a cheerleading number. That's Saturday night.
I remember when we decided, we're like, let's do a can-can, but we're like, we have to change it up a little because there's so many can-cans.
The song has to be like, la 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 la, oh, la 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 la, you know, like crazy punk rock French, and that's where Ce Plan pour moi came from.
Process is different every time. Usually the first thing that comes along is the music. We'll get the idea and then we'll find the music. And that's usually what takes the longest because aside from the choreography, it's so important. If you don't have a good song, you don't have a good number. It's got to have like the right repetition, the right amount of like punch, and it's got to be short, you know? So usually that's the next thing that comes along. And then the choreography.
Angie definitely, you know, puts the structure together, comes up with the whole base for it. We'll go over to my place to rehearse, and she'll have the whole kind of outline of it, and we'll fill it in. We'll all fill it in with just bits and pieces.
And the costumes are usually the last thing that comes into play, unless the costumes are the inspiration, which has happened before, you know, where we've had costumes like sitting in the house for 6 months and no number to go with them. But I find it usually works best if the costumes are the last thing that comes into play.
Tara and I have had ideas for costumes. We've definitely come up with themes and stuff, but Angie definitely does the costumes, and I'm glad for that. You know, I love to help. She does a great job at it. I think it's a big part of the Pontani Sisters, and the whole, with the name and the feel for the act, I think the fact that we don't have such a huge budget to work with, and she's taking flowers from her Uncle Larry's hair shop, his, you know, beauty shop, or he had like these fans on the wall, and, you know, she like used some of them, or her dad had some flower arrangements around the home. It just has this Pontani feel to it, which, you know, I think is important.
My friend Luigi called me, and he was like, you gotta come and ride in the Mermaid Parade on my like 1970 white Cadillac. And I was like, what is the Mermaid Parade? He's like, you gotta get together a mermaid costume.
Serve those batteries because there's not a lot on there. We only have 2 batteries and they're both like 15 minutes long. So.
Yes, ma'am.
So Ange threw together some insane outfit, and she helped me throw together something that paled in comparison to hers. But we went down there and we were in the parade.
And there was like thousands of girls, well, maybe not thousands, but a ton of girls dressed as mermaids, guys dressed as pirates, cars turned into giant lobsters, floats with like, I don't even know what on them, like naked people running all over the place, kids dressed up in mermaid costumes on cars, and it was just this huge, great parade, and it was so much fun.
I think that's kind of where the Pontani Sisters were truly born, because it was Angie and Tara sitting on top of cars as mermaids. And I think they got that feeling of being dressed up in beautiful costumes, and I think that was the beginning of maybe Angie putting things together.
And then we performed on the boardwalk afterwards. Tara and I did, with our friends the Brooklyn Bums. I choreographed some routines and we did them. And we did the same thing for about like 3 years, where we would go be in the parade and perform. Actually, I think it's more like 5. And people started recognizing us as just being part of the parade, because there are certain people who are in the parade every year, and that's just, they wait all year for that parade, and they go and they hit it, and they have these great costumes, and, you know, they're celebrities at the parade. So we did the parade a lot, and people kind of knew us and expected us to be there.
And we just formed friendships, and I almost feel like that's where we come from sometimes. And a lot of people, it's one of the highest honors ever, truly associate us with Coney Island, and I hold that in such high regard. It's such a huge compliment to me.
It's kind of run down, but there's still this magical quality about it. I don't know, I just think the Pontani Sisters fit into Coney Island in this way of, I think we have that feeling of that old style performance, and I think Coney Island has that same old feeling, but yet there's something new about it.
In the summer of 2000, Dick called me and was like, hey, we'd love for you to come down and do a show here at the Sideshow this summer for Tiertz's Wine Bath, which was what they were calling Burlesque on the Beach before they changed the name.
Getting a show running and becoming professionals, you have to work out a lot of the kinks, Well, in some ways, Coney Island has never worked out any of the kinks, which is what we love about it.
We'd never put together a freestanding show before. We had been in other people's shows. We performed in several shows. We've been doing Marians and Barmacy and Windows on the World, but those were nights. And there's a big difference between a night and a show.
We were changing as fast as we could, and we were like, Tyler, we just need you to talk in between like one act. And then we were like, okay, every act.
We did like 12 numbers. Like we would get changed really fast, and Tyler would tell some jokes, and we'd go out and do a number, get changed really fast. Tyler would breathe fire.
I think burlesque fits with Coney Island so well that who wouldn't want to come see a show on a Friday night in Coney Island, burlesque performance. I mean, it's like, I think one of the best nights you could have in New York City. The people who also run Coney Island now, I think they have the same vision as us about performance and keeping something alive, this old style of performance and this amusement park.